In your marriage, have you ever wondered why it feels like you're drifting apart, or that the enemy is coming in between you and you are living parallel lives and not living a life of oneness? Join us today while we explore this specific topic in our marriage moment. Hi guys, thank you for tuning into this week's marriage moment. My name's Max and I'm one of the elders in Church Unlimited. So in the Bible, we find this principle of oneness in our marriages. And for the next few weeks, I want to explore what it actually means to be one with your spouse. But also, what's the purpose and what are the benefits of this oneness? We first read about this in Genesis 2 verse 24. And we read the following: "Therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." This is repeated 5 times in the Bible, and we even see that Jesus refers to this principle when he teaches us about marriage and divorce. But this institution is under heavy attack. Stats shows us at the moment that 50% of first marriages are ending in divorce, 60% of second marriages, and 73% of third marriages. And when I started looking into this, I asked the normal questions, questions like, why are people getting divorced? And when are they most likely to get divorced? But I was stirred by the Holy Spirit, and He showed me that I was actually asking the wrong question. The question that I should be asking myself is, do I find my marriage to be sacred? Now, if I Google the meaning or the word or the definition for the word sacred, you find that it means connected with God. And it kind of caught me off guard, because it challenged everything that I believed in when it comes to marriages at the time. And then I realized something very important about the strategy the enemy uses to break up our marriages. But before I'm going to share that with you, I want to quickly have a look at 3 reasons why we should keep our marriages as being sacred or connected to God. And the first reason is that marriage was created by God. See, society would like us to believe that marriage was created man-made, but in Genesis 1 and 2, we read that God created man in His own image, and then He presided over the very first wedding. This was the first institution that God created. Before tribes, before kingdoms, before governments, even before municipalities or even churches, God created this institution of marriage. Jesus confirms this in Matthew 9 verse 6, when He says that, where He warns us to not separate that which God has put together. The second reason why we should keep our marriages as being sacred is because it's an extremely unique relationship. My journey in marriage ministry started in 2014. And during that time, it all started for me by asking one question, and that was, what is intimacy? When I started doing research on the topic, I found that I absolutely misunderstood God's meaning for intimacy in marriage. He taught me that He wanted me to be connected with Karia on 5 intimacy levels, and they were recreational and social intimacy, intellectual intimacy, spiritual intimacy, emotional intimacy, and physical intimacy. I learned that building these intimacies into my relationship with Karia created a relationship where I was safe, where I felt loved, where I felt accepted, and I had the freedom to be who I wanted or who God created me to be without any fear of judgment. But God also taught me about the dangers of neglecting these intimacies in my marriage and building these intimacies with anyone else. See, He reserves this extremely true intimacy for our marriages so that we are protected. And this is why we should keep it as a sacred and connected to God relationship. The third reason why we should see our marriages as sacred is because it's compared to the relationship that Jesus has with the church. And Paul does this comparison between marriage and this relationship Jesus has to the church in Ephesians 5. And he instructs wives to submit to their husbands as the church submits to Christ. but also he gives husbands the instruction to love their wives like Jesus loved the church and gave himself up for her. And this is a huge responsibility if you think about it. Christian marriage is supposed to be this representation of a very holy relationship Jesus has with the church. So let's say, for example, somebody who doesn't know Jesus yet looks at our marriage. What is he supposed to see? Well, I believe he's supposed to see the same self-sacrificing love that Jesus had for us, but also the devotion that the sacrifice that Jesus did for the church creates within us. And if we consider our marriages to be sacred, it has a profound impact on the image that we have of this oneness, of this relationship God has created. And we realize that our marriage has a purpose. And it's not just put in place for our own happiness. So in the beginning, I talked about this strategy that the enemy uses against us so that we can, so that he can break up our marriages. And think about it. What do they need to do? What does the enemy need to do to create this feeling that we are growing apart, or that we are drifting away from each other, or that we have this huge canyon between each other, or that we're living parallel lives and we're not living a life of oneness? And the answer to this is quite simple. He has to remove God from our marriages. They try everything in their power to get us to have this feeling of disconnection from God. They want to create their own strongholds in our lives where we don't submit to God's authority. And if we cannot tap into God's power, we are going to be utterly and completely overwhelmed by the challenges that we will face in our marriage. What the enemy wants from us is a marriage that's without love, a marriage without mercy, a marriage without grace, essentially a marriage without God. As soon as we remove God from any area in our marriage, we're in trouble. When times become difficult in this broken world, the areas where we are not connected to God is going to be the area that's going to be our breaking point. And in Ecclesiastes 4 verse 9 to 12, we read about this. Two are better than one, because they have good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone and he falls and has not another to lift him up. Again, if two lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. So in closing, I want to urge you to really look at your marriages as being sacred, something that's connected to God. You know, we are one in our marriage because God is the holy thread that keeps us together. If there's any area in our lives where this oneness between God, man, and woman does not exist in our marriages, I want to really ask you guys to make a point of it, a mission to correct it immediately. Or you're going to suffer the pain of regret. Next week, we're going to go on with this, and I want to thank you guys for listening. And in the meantime, please guys, be safe and be blessed.